We're going to start. This is the official Cloud is a Disruption panel. I don't know, 5, 6, 7-year legacy, starting out with networking and virtualization. Today, I mean, as you look 3 to 5 years ahead, the impact that cloud's going to have, think of it as the engine room of Internet of Things, of big data, of the transformation of business and computing. So we've assembled some of the top people in the world that are involved with cloud initiatives, infrastructure, platform, networking side of things, to kind of talk about new operating models and what the effect is going to be over the next 3 to 5 years so that you can plan accordingly. It might be like China in reverse, in terms of the growth and what's happening. So right next to me is Steve Daheb, SVP of Oracle Cloud. Welcome.
Thank you.
James Staten, Chief Strategist, Cloud+Enterprise at Microsoft Azure, right? Correct?
Yep.
And then Saravan, Rajendran, VP and GM of the Cloud and Virtualization Group at Cisco. So they each represent kind of a complementary perspective, platform infrastructure and networking that are really key components. So I'm going to go ahead and start, and just to make sure that we're all on kind of the same page. We're going to talk about something we talked about a year ago, 2 years ago, and just set the definition the first couple minutes of what we're talking about so that anyone that's new to this dialogue in this series will be able to catch up. So the first question is hybrid cloud. It's clearly becoming a very dominant meme within IT and business thinking about it. What is it, and why does this audience care about it?
Well, so one of the things I've always said is let's not try to define hybrid cloud too tightly because it is in the eye of the beholder. What really is more important is that it is a public cloud service, whether it's SaaS, a cloud platform, or other value proposition, talking to something else. That's really it. That's what hybrid cloud means. And you may not choose to turn your on-premise into a cloud. There may be no point in doing that. The 1995 SAP ERP system you put in place, I don't care what you do to it, you're not turning it into a cloud. Forget it. But it's still relevant. It's still going to be relevant long term. And if you can make that relevant by bringing its data into the cloud so it can be consumed and combined with other things, that's the value. So really what we should be thinking about when it comes to hybrid is, what is the value I get from being hybrid rather than what exactly is hybrid?
Yeah, I'd say it's interesting because it's, with the rise of cloud, it sort of felt like cloud was this sort of one-way street. And at the end of the day, you need to think about hybrid and really building a bridge. How do I connect premise with cloud? We talk about the journey to cloud, and every journey starts with where you stand today. Mm-hmm. So we have these investments we've made. I have a 17 million lines of code legacy app that I probably can't move to cloud right away, but there are certain workloads I want to move to cloud. There are certain things I want to move to cloud. There are certain applications that are sort of cloud native, mobile native. So how do I connect those back with the applications I might have on premise? How do I unify data that might span premise or cloud or mobile? Yeah. And so, when you look at these things, really hybrid is the best solution. Again, really think of it as a bridge. And a set of solutions that could actually address both sides and connect both of them together.
Yeah, the whole debate about I'm going to do everything on-prem in my own data centers versus I'm going to go to public clouds for everything, that debate is over. Yeah. Every enterprise IT is going to have a combination of these two. Because the choice depends on what application, like what Steve mentioned, what workload you're trying to leverage the resources for. So since every IT organization is going to have a combination, you are going to have a hybrid cloud strategy, leveraging the resources on-prem as well as off-prem. Yeah.
So for, I don't know how many decades, 4 or 5 decades or so, enterprises had been building data centers at a pretty healthy clip. Yeah. Capacity was incredible. So why would enterprises look to not continue doing that for the next 3 to 5 years at the same clip? Why would they be looking to cloud to augment, supplement, versus owning their own facility?
Well, I think it's a pattern we've seen repeat itself multiple times over. You build a data center when there isn't a reasonable offering that you can get somewhere else. You build it because it provides you differentiation. You build it because it enables you to do something you just can't do any other way. And that is no longer true about infrastructure. Now I can get the same kind of capacity, the same kind of access, but I can get it faster and I can get it cheaper from other locations. And so the desire to have your own data center really is not what's going going to help your company move forward. Now you can focus at a higher level and say, what is it in technology I need to focus on that defines and will redefine my business going forward? And I don't have to buy and build servers to do that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, again, you have choice today. You have choice of what you decide you want to focus on and you might develop on-premise versus your point about leverage. How do I get leverage and augmentation and supplementation in the cloud? If I'm doing app dev testing or development, do I need to have sort of a provision environment on-premise that maybe sometimes goes underutilized? Or is it something that I could rapidly spin up and spin down in the cloud when I need it? And then when you think about sort of what we're all dealing with in terms of flat resources or doing more with less. Again, as I get leverage in the cloud, then what can I do with those same resources? How do I get them focused on what matters the most? Those things that might be core to my business. So instead of spending time assembling the information, let vendors like us help do that in the cloud for you, and you spend more time on those key things that you need to do to drive your business. And so it becomes a choice you make in terms of where you invest and the leverage you're going to get.
So I've got two more kind of geek-centric questions, and probably the geeks out there already know what I'm going to ask about. And then we're going to go into some of the more big picture, how is this going to change, how is this disruption, how is it going to impact not just business, but the rest of the economy and sectors. 2 years ago, I would say the biggest reservation about the cloud, especially public cloud, but I'd say it's true to some extent about hybrid, was security. What about security now in terms of cloud as an operating model?
So we had a big panel on security before lunch, and they talked about a lot of different issues. And those issues are common whether you deploy your application on a public cloud or you do it on an enterprise IT. So this whole notion of security in the cloud is pretty bad, and that's the #1 concern for most enterprises even today. But companies like Amazon, Azure, Microsoft, and everyone is investing billions of dollars in building infrastructure and making sure that it is secure for workloads to run there. So the whole concept of perimeter is completely dissolving. So how do you, whether you do it on enterprise or cloud, to me, it's the same thing. You have to address the same issues. You have to look at it from a holistic perspective.
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting. I think you could actually turn security in the cloud as to enabler to move to the cloud. It winds up being moves from a deterrent to this is something that actually people want to go to because we find the environment more secure. One, to echo what you said, I agree. There's been a lot of focus on securing the perimeter. Right? I've been dealing with that my entire career, but at the end of the day, most breaches happen internal to a company. So how do you think about protecting data where it lives, encryption at rest? How do we redact or remove data at the application layer? And so those are things that we could do on premise, and those are things we can absolutely do in cloud as well. And then you have federated ID management, other things where we can address not only the data protection, but also the access management. And so I do think, when you think about managing that environment internally, for instance, take a patch upgrading security in your environment. How long would it take for you to do that on premise versus the next time I log into cloud, all of that's already been done for me by major vendors. And so there are definitely advantages to actually having data up in the cloud and protected with all these same means. And so I actually think, if we look 3, 5+ years out, I actually think the secure cloud is going to be an enabler to moving to the cloud and actually be a big driver versus an inhibitor.
What I find so interesting about this topic is that everybody wants a binary answer. The cloud is better, I'm better. And binary answers do not exist in this world. If we look at how hackers are doing things now, just to your point, they are no longer attacking the perimeter, but they're no longer just attacking one front. They're doing coordinated attacks across multiple areas. And the only way we're really going to tackle all this is where the billions of dollars we spend, and these guys spend as well, to do good security in the cloud is done in conjunction with your own efforts to protect how you build your workflows, what kind of things you put in your IoT architecture, what you allow your employees to do. And if we can provide you the transparency that you feel comfortable that the things we're doing complement what you're doing, and as a result, we are collectively making you secure, that's really the answer. And that's a big reason why when we bring things out like the Azure Security Center, it is not to say, you're secure, go away, don't worry about it, you're covered. It's to say, Here's how we've got you set up. Here's what we're seeing. Here's what we're doing to protect it. Here's how you can find roles and policies that make sense for you. But at the end of the day, you control the roles and the policies. And so it's really important that we all recognize that security is not going to be a binary decision. And so we really have to stay involved with it, but recognize that where your expertise is in securing your business, where ours is in securing the services that you run your business on.
I was going to ask a second geek question around reliability and uptime, but I think I already know the answer, and I think the audience from your answers about security already knows the answer to that question. So let's just dig right into, the impact. So, what impact is hybrid cloud going to have? Let's just throw it out there as on the composition of the Fortune 500.
So the definition of a company, whether we use cloud as a premise for that, is already changing tremendously. If you think about it, there's no longer a very clear delineation between you and your customer. So that's going to be true of you, your cloud provider, your customer, your partner. All of that is now becoming fluid. And organizations have to be able to grab the talent, work with the right partners to deliver the business value that their customers care about. They need to listen to their customers and understand where they're changing and shifting and how you can take advantage of that. If there's anything that's sort of a big change that's taking place, it's the pace at which we have to adapt. Because it is so easy for our customers to switch from us to somebody else now, that the ability for us to have said before, well, we've been partners for 20 years, you buy through me, you have this PO in place, it's too hard to get somebody else in there, that's all gone. We now have to be saying, I could be disrupted at any point. How do I leverage these cloud technologies that are out there, the partners I've got, the customers I've got, to make brand ambassadors out of all the people I do business with, identify the next business value, and go after it?
Yeah.
So to me, cloud is an enabler with all the changes that James mentioned, right? So what's happening is, what does it mean for IT? IT traditionally has been a builder of services on-prem and delivering those services. They have to evolve to become more of a broker of services, because they can leverage services from a SaaS provider for document management, let's say box.com, or they can leverage public cloud vendors and leverage their infrastructure and deliver the same service, or they can deliver it from on-prem. So they have to become more of a broker of services than builder of services. That's one. And the second thing is that James talked about being fast. Agility is so important. Gartner calls this as mode 2 IT. So enterprises have to slowly migrate from mode 1, that was all about efficiency, processes, rules, to mode 2, which is more about agility, how quickly I can bring things to market, right? And that means a significant cultural change within IT organizations to go to DevOps model and deliver things fast. Yeah. So that's the real impact it's going to have. Cloud is not just about public clouds. You have to start building private clouds within your own environment as well.
But I think, like Greg, to your point, and we were talking about it earlier, look at sort of the Fortune 500 list 10 years ago, and look at the makeup of that list today, and think about cloud and how disruptive it's been to existing categories, and how it can enable the creation of new categories, new ways to offer products from a fulfillment mechanism, new ways to get insights and engage and drive loyalty and serve our customers in unique ways, rapidly getting insight where we can sort of turn that into advantage and, again, serve our customers in a much better way. And so that is what cloud delivers. I do think it'd be interesting to sort of look at that side by side, how that list has changed and how cloud enabled that.
And I think if I combine the three of your comments between the agility, the change factor, and the Fortune 500, I think it becomes very clear that as you look 3 to 5 years out, those companies that embrace this idea, the power of agility and change and contact with their customers and being in much more of a dynamic operating environment, then it really becomes clear of the magnitude that this could have, and that those companies that are on the sidelines are like the ones that, watched the steam engine and said, oh, that's a fad, telegraph fad, et cetera. And so in some cases, IT is part of the solution, but also part of the problem. Any thoughts on that?
Well, and I'll say it's actually really interesting. You sort of talked about the power, and it's not just of agility, it's the power of insight. mean, because if you think about it, what does the cloud allow you to do in terms of aggregating information from disparate data sources? And what can I do with that information? How do I democratize that information, get it in the hands of everybody in my business so I can better serve? And I'm sort of speaking from a line of business view. So I'm a 3-time public company CMO. And I think about the impact that having real insights into my customers changed how I can engage and change the products we were able to deliver to differentiate ourselves. And so to me, when you look forward, I think companies that sort of leverage that versus dismiss it as the next fad are the ones that are going to really innovate and become leaders. And those who sort of don't embrace the power of cloud, particularly around insights, I think are going to lose. And so that's sort of a big piece to look at.
IT is still a problem. When I talk to enterprise customers, what I'm noticing is that if a developer wants to run his app and comes to IT, it takes like 2 to 3 weeks to provision a server. So what does the developer do? They go to AWS, swipe their credit card, get a server up and running within 15 minutes or so. So more and more line of businesses are going and procuring these services, and IT is the problem today. And they are not helping their end users with the level of service that they need at the speed that they need. So Gartner predicts, like, in 2020, in the next 5 years, 90% of IT expenses will come outside of IT budget. That's huge. And so there is this whole shadow IT phenomenon that's happening. So if IT doesn't change and embrace their end users' needs and start becoming a broker, then they're going to fail.
So I'm going to challenge that a little bit. I don't think IT's role is to be the broker. A broker is a really crappy job. Your job is to take orders from people, negotiate the best price on that, and then give them back to somebody else, and then somebody else does something innovative with it. I think if IT is going to become a broker, you might as well become part of the procurement department. Where IT really has a future is to move from information technology to innovation and transformation. That's what they need to be focusing on. And the way you're going to drive that is not by being the guy who sort of does the negotiation. You got a procurement department, have them do that. What you want to be is the evangelist and the understanding of these other outside technologies and offerings, partner with the business and help them leverage those technologies to achieve those aims. Because the last time I checked with any major business department, they're saying, I think there's an opportunity over here, how can we capitalize on it? And they're not asking the IT department to do that because it's 3 to 5 weeks. The IT department has to inject itself into those conversations. The only way to do that is to change the perception that I am the data center, I'm the back end, I'm the protector of history. They need to say, okay, look, I'm going to use tools like our enterprise mobility suite to look at all of these SaaS applications that are being used across my company and not freak out. But I'm going to look at all those SaaS applications that are coming in my company. I'm going to say, these are all the opportunities. These are all the things that are changing our business. I need to go accelerate the use of these technologies and these products. The other part of the problem with IT is that IT needs to think about what happened when they first got out of college, not the job they do today. I've yet to run into an IT professional who left college saying, man, I'm so excited about managing version 1.02 upgrade that's going to take 6 months to apply. I think what we all said when we left college was, I want to use technology to drive business change. So get there.
Let me address the broker thing, the reason why I said that. Let's take the example of Cisco, with Cisco IT. So we had a 15-year-old documentation management system called EDCS. So over the last year or so, what we started noticing is that end users are going to box.com. So it came a point where the IT had to officially approve box.com as a service that is delivered to the employees because the employees really want it. It's much more easier. I can manage it with my mobile devices, iPad, et cetera, right? Which the old system couldn't do. So that's what I mean by broker, right? So we're satisfying the needs through internal innovation, as well as where it makes sense, go and get it from outside. But IT is part of that.
Let me echo too. I thought I was going to have to sit between you guys there for a second. I think a couple perspectives. One on, as a CMO, is probably one of the worst shadow IT offenders you could find, right? If I couldn't send a file, because my limit was too small on my email, or I didn't have an environment to share massive PowerPoint files or images or what have you with my team, I'd find a way to do it, right? And so I do think that's, and then it's sort of my other perspective. My dad was a CIO, and he always viewed himself as that great enabler, providing that that platform upon which businesses could run. And so for me as a CMO, if my CIO came to me and said, man, I can give you all the services you need to integrate across sales, marketing, and finance data. I can give you all the services you need to track everything from how an inbound lead came to ultimately did we close one, lost that thing, and what was the contribution, what was the return. And so I'm interested to have that conversation. We talk about SaaS and extending and enriching and PaaS platforms that allow you to integrate and mobilize and do all those things. So to me, I think this is where IT can grab a hold of this conversation and represent it back to line of business and really take control of it. So if they came to me with that story, I'm all ears, I'm all in. I would much rather be focused on what I'm doing versus swiping credit cards on Dropbox or something like that. So,
a couple years back, I was meeting with a CTO from a very high-profile internet brand, and I was blown away because we were talking about the change factor. And he shared with me, he wouldn't let me keep it, but it was a chart of the 36 things that had to happen to put a server in their environment. And this takes 1 week, this takes 2 weeks. Yeah. And it was shocking to me. And at the core, maybe a lot of the IT teams really want to be agile and quick, but they have to deal with the chart and the checklist, of the things that want to happen. So,
by the way, that's where cloud is the enabler, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's where cloud can really change the dynamic.
Programmability, the API-driven environment, application programming interfaces that allow you to scale and use these environments. So we've got about 8.5 minutes left. So 2 questions. First, what's the impact of the cloud going to be on other fields? Medicine, biotech, healthcare, some of the other things, the environment. What's the cloud going to do for the rest of the world?
So I just came from AWS reInvent. So they talked about Philips Healthcare. So Philips' internal infrastructure couldn't handle 37 million patient records and images and stuff. So they went to Amazon, leveraged the scale, and now they are processing up to 20 petabytes of data, 390 million records, which is patient medical records, images that were scanned, and trying to mine information to help to improve the patient care going forward. So these things, the scale at which the cloud enables these sort of applications to happen is amazing. You can't build infrastructure. Philips can't afford to build infrastructure to handle all these things. So they are leveraging Amazon to do it. So that's just one example of how it's going to change the way other industries operate and other business outcomes that are going to come in those industries.
Yeah, I had a couple things to say. I mean, it is, we talk about the insights and the data aggregation can't be more important than something like healthcare. When you have thousands of petabytes of information and you can aggregate that, I mean, you're accelerating your time to diagnosis. You're accelerating, your time to getting sort of that proper treatment and care. So I think, being able to do that, I think has a profound effect on that industry. And then actually mobility and how cloud enables that as well. So sort of remote physician healthcare. And a great example of pediatric heart surgeon in Miami's Children's Hospital. And literally would talk about, look, now on my laptop or my iPad, I have access to all my patients' records. And if something's going down and I'm not in the hospital, I can more rapidly get the right information, get it to the right people's hands. And he goes, before the old mechanism of having to drive in, trying to find data that might have been on different sources, he goes lives get lost in those moments. And so to think about that profound effect that cloud and mobility and sort of, the insights, from looking across, multiple patients to sort of help, again, diagnose and treat is I couldn't think of something more important.
Yeah, I would net it out that there's 3 things you're going to get from the cloud: speed, scale, enablement. Notice I did not say cost savings. You're going to get some cost savings along the way, but that's not the whole point. The whole point, just as both of them have said, is scale massive amounts of data that I can aggregate together. Speed, the ability for me to get it deployed today, to do the thing I'm looking for today. But enablement is where you're going to see the most change over the next 3 to 5 years. Because if you look at where cloud has been up to this point, you needed DevOps professionals to take advantage of cloud platforms. You needed specialists who knew how to use these specific products. You need data scientists right now if you want to take advantage of analytics. That is all going to be in the past. In 3 to 5 years, you're going to be able to go to these things and ask in natural language, if I combine this data and this data, will I be able to come out with a better discount for this class of customer? And the answer will come right back. And that is going to be the real game changer here. And so you're going to see more and more enablement where business people with business skills will be able to take advantage of this stuff. There will not be as much of the technical skill capabilities in your business required to get those outcomes.
Yeah, I had a comment about cost savings, right? So there is this notion that cloud is cheap, and customers are going to cloud because it's cheap. Amazon is a cheap place to squat, but it gets very expensive if you want to live there.
Yeah.
So when we talk about clouds, to get the same agility, IT organizations need to build in-house private clouds, because at some point, if you are running in Amazon, even if you pay by the hour, at some point the total cost of ownership is going to be much higher on the cloud compared to building an infrastructure yourselves and running it, right? So a lot of enterprises rhyme with that, really resonate with that thought process. And once you start building something in-house, and it's 35 to 50% cheaper than going to a public cloud for applications that you need to run 24/7 on a production environment. So customers have to think about cloud as not just public clouds, but also private clouds, and how do I leverage both with a hybrid cloud model?
And I think 4 or 5 years ago, Mark really nailed it when he was talking about the strategic importance of bandwidth to a nation's economy and security, et cetera, in the world, in this new, more dynamic world. And if you think about the evolution of cloud and the ability, not just for the pipes, but the distribution of computing power on demand to who needs it, when they need it, faster than anybody else. It clearly can create not just competitive advantages for companies, but also for nations. So the fact that Amazon and Microsoft and Oracle and Cisco and Google are, making investments in this area could yield some very good longer-term competitive results. So that being said, 3 minutes left. What's going to be the big surprise to the people in this room in terms of the cloud's impact? What are things that they haven't thought about yet, perhaps, but that you think are kind of interesting?
Well, I'll give one good example that one of our partners has done using the Azure cloud in Israel. They're actually making it so that we can actually produce cows more efficiently using the cloud. The way they're doing it is they're basically putting bands, like a Microsoft band, on the ankle of the cow, and then are tracking where it goes, what it eats, how often it does that, when it's sort of ready, and using all of this information by aggregating it in the cloud to figure out the ideal time for reproductive health. And that is allowing them to actually increase substantially the ability for them to ensure that they're going to have, and get this, female cows. So if they are supporting the dairy industry, doesn't help to be producing a whole bunch of bulls. It makes a lot of sense to produce a whole lot of women. And that's exactly what they've found out analytically they can do by using the cloud. So there are industries that you think are really distant from technology that are going to be revolutionized by tapping into the cloud.
That's a great example of IoT and cloud, right? Leveraging both. And this is going to happen with agriculture as well, right? When do you water the plants, and how do you monitor the climate conditions, et cetera, and with sensors getting put in different places and sprinklers being controlled through the internet, with software that collects all these events and analyzes the data in cloud at scale and comes out with actionable intelligence that you can use in those industries to get much better productivity and much better benefits.
Does anybody have a question? We have 1 minute and 15 seconds left. Aha, speaking of agility, here we go. Wow.
So I'm interested to know if you think that all your clouds are at par today, and if there's standards emerging such that if I'm selling a software to a Fortune 500, do I have to have that software enabled to run on-premise and in cloud, or can I only offer it to them in cloud with a certification so that IT doesn't have to spend so much time as a broker?
Mm-hmm.
So my response is that the software as a service model is picking up a lot. And going back to the Box example, IT put in a single sign-on mechanism with Cisco username and passwords into Box, working with Box, so that IT still felt secure, but the software is getting delivered as a service from box. So, but I do know that there are some environments where customers today still prefer an on-prem software installed in their environment, and they manage it. So you're going to see both of these, but for most consumer applications, SaaS is the model to go. And for most enterprises, if you are targeting big financials, et cetera, then you will probably end up selling it on-prem.
Just one quick point too. It's on sort of that integration piece and sort of multiple clouds. I do think you have to look at a solution that has a very strong integration component. We understand it's a heterogeneous environment. You're going to have multiple different type of discrete apps. You're going to have different locations between premise and cloud to connect. And different legacy apps. Different SaaS apps. And so ultimately, I think we felt in our history that suites win, but we understand that these are sort of unique, heterogeneous environments. And so, choose a platform that is going to allow you to integrate across multiple vendors, multiple types of products. And I think, that's a core focus for all of us up here, just understanding the realities of the environments today and how best to bridge them going forward.
Yeah, from Cisco perspective, we see this similar to the internet. There were so many different islands of networks with AppleTalk, IPX, DECnet, et cetera. And we created internet by combining these different things and enabling these islands to communicate with IP. With clouds, it's the same thing. Azure's APIs are different from AWS, which is different from Oracle. And so we created Intercloud, which is basically creating a platform to interconnect all these different clouds. So offering our customers a standard, easy way, seamless way, in a secure fashion to drop workloads into these different clouds with one interface.
So I have to cut it because Mark's hook will come out here, and that's why I've been leaning forward here, because I've been a victim a few times. But you guys, we all had busy schedules. A big cloud show's going on right now in Las Vegas. So I do really appreciate your involvement. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for your time.